Live. Live. Pop out chat. How do I pop out my Google chat? Oh, here it is. Pop out chat. Okay, let's see if this works. Oh, cool. I still have chat here. Hi everybody, I'll get started in a sec. I'm just checking the stream's health. By the way, how is the latency and stuff? How's it lag? Here, please. Remind me later. Come on, phone. Like, this isn't cool. Okay, Twitter, tweet. Oops. Twitter autocorrects Kelsey's name incorrectly. Darn. Twitch.tv/mindgames. Weldon, I'm live. Okay, let me see if that went out correctly. Hi everybody, nice to see you. Hello, Ogslaxter. So I wanted to make this video to talk about the article that Kelsey just wrote for Kelsey. I think I said that. Kelsey just wrote for Yahoo Esport, and I wanted to first check to see how my audio is. Can you guys tell me? Is my audio okay? Am I coming through choppy? Am I out of sync? Say something, I'm giving up on you. Sounds good? Okay, cool. So I was streaming from my laptop on the same internet before, and it was painful and pathetic, and that was because I had my stream settings, my OBS settings wrong. So I think that I'm better now. I think that we're in business. All right, so first of all, I want to start off by saying that I've been following Kelsey for a while, and I really like all her content. And this article being the one of the main exceptions. And I don't like her because I'm a raging feminist. That's just beside the point. Her stuff is just good. But this article is really like pushing it, in my opinion. So I wanted to make a video essentially debunking the main premise of this. And my opinion, after reflecting a little bit, is that I think that she wanted to clickbait the title, but then ended up trying to thread the narrative through her whole article so she wouldn't be accused of clickbaiting, because she not only contradicts this kind of extensively in her own article. So it's clear that she wanted to make some really valid points, but then it contradicts kind of the main premise of her article in a lot of ways. But also, she essentially creates this entire reality of what it is that I said and what it is that we're doing in G2, and invented it all, and then is arguing against it instead of just like calling me and asking, is this what you were talking about? And bases it all off of a few statements that then she conjecturizes into infinity in a very kind of like crazy way. So I just need to clarify this because I think this article is ridiculous. Okay, so a perplexing narrative surrounds G2 esports training philosophy in the EU LCS. I'm here on Yahoo eSport. I'm just going to go through the article real quick because I want to go from source material, and I will talk about my points, not just the points here, as we go. So first, her first piece of evidence is this comment from Crepo from a conversation with Mithy, which is just really simply, you know what, you could go for a massive lane lead right here, but it involves a little risky play. Instead, we're trying to play a very clean game, focus on objectives, and if we get lane leads, we want to use lane leads to get a team lead. So Crepo presented this, Kelsey's arguing against it, and she says, further quoting, that's where the whole theory from the game style comes from, because on the international stage, you will not be able to generate any leads versus these players. And then she goes on, this assertion is factually inaccurate, historically speaking, blah, 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 and tries to argue against it. So first of all, this is way out of context. Context matters, and this quote is way out of context. Essentially, we're talking about scrimmages. You don't not make a play off of a stupid opponent in a tournament game when they're idiotic and make a stupid mistake and in lane. You punish them. But in scrims, if you are better than your opponents and you consistently like trash them nonstop, and so think of it this way. There are low risk, high reward plays. Low risk, medium reward, low risk, low reward, medium risk, medium reward, medium risk, low reward, high risk, low reward, high risk, medium reward. And on stage, everybody does low and medium risk, low and medium reward plays. And of course, low risk, high reward, but those are very few and far between. And you're usually winning by then. And in training, everybody does high risk, low reward plays. Okay? So what Mithy is saying here is, I'm not going to take the medium risk, low reward play, because now I realize, first of all, that it is low reward. Like, we thought it was more reward to do these things sometimes, but actually a lot of times if you're playing against a good team, it's not a big reward. And also, it just makes the scrim useless. You can't actually then practice, a setup later because you were just clown fiesting the whole game, making these plays that you wouldn't necessarily make on stage when there's a lot more at stake. So we're talking about this distinction, okay? And she kind of conveys it to mean we shouldn't try to get leads against top-tier Korean teams. Whatever. There's no point in harping on about this anymore. Okay, so on to the second piece of evidence. One of the team's assistant coaches, Weldon, Mind Games Weldon Green. You can just say Weldon Green. Mind Games is just the name of my brand. It's not a handle or anything. And she links a video that I published talking about average game time. And the premise of the video is casters should stop using average game time as an indicator of a team's skill, as 20 to 40 minute decision making is the most important part of the game. This is where most of the important fundamentals occur, in my opinion. I agree with Green's assertion that the short average game time shouldn't be used as an indication of skill, but rather to contextualize playstyle. Okay, great. From there, he lost me. Clearly. Green goes too far in stating that game time and losses is more strongly associated with skill. He should know Jin or Green Wings are not the best team in the history of LoL by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, so you totally missed the point of this. Game time and losses is more strongly associated with sucking. Okay, do you get it? So it's the reverse of what you're saying. I'm saying if you lose the game, every game that you lose, if you lose in 18 minutes, you suck more than a team who loses all those same games in 35 minutes. Does that make sense? It should be correlated in reverse of skill with games ending earlier regularly. So if you take all of your losses and then you look at the average game time of those, you can say this team sucks more than this team. That's what I'm saying. That's what you should use average game time for. You shouldn't use it for winning teams. Gating, like kind of judging the quality of their play in a winning game. Unless, but then like we were refining it, right? I was arguing with people over Twitter and we were thinking about it and we were going back and forth and we figured out like we should zone the game. between 0 to 20, 20 to 40, and 40 plus. And if you get to the 40 plus point, then game time starts to matter again, because like, why did you get here in the first place? Is it a comeback win, in which case you can be more gated by skill? Or is it like not a comeback win, in which case it's just taking you forever to close? Is it composition related? So there's all these complications. But anyway, average game time is this metric. And everybody agreed with that, all the analysts. Beyond that, so misstated, beyond that, the more difficult part of the picture Green has painted is the idea that you can break a game down into parts and objectively decide what is the most important one to focus on. That is correct. I am arguing that that training is a zero-sum game, and training is a choose-your-own-adventure book. You can only train one thing at the expense of not training something else in a given minute. I say, this minute we are focusing on this thing and we're trying to learn this thing. This next minute we can go to a different thing, or we can stay on the same thing. In the next minute, you can train a third thing, or you can stay on the same thing. Okay? And the teams that win the World Championship over and over and over again with different rosters, with the same structure and the same game philosophy, are choosing their adventure better. Okay? There are more important parts to focus on, and there are less important parts to focus on. And if you can't figure that out, then you're going to lose. So it's true. You can break a game. That's what sport is. That's what coaches do. It's like 99.9% of our job. Unlike the narratives that casters propelled, this in itself is in itself troubling, as it implies G2 or those around them lack a sense of consistency in understanding the motivation of their approach. No, it's not troubling. Green seems to be of the opinion that it doesn't matter if you can generate an early game lead, as the game will come down to a few decisions post 20 minutes, rather than arguing G2 won't get lane leads at international competition. He claims they won't matter. So basically, I'm saying I don't care if I get a lead or not at an international competition or at any competition. This isn't about international competitions. I'm talking about playing perfect League of Legends. The decisions that you make from 20 to 40 minutes are plays that win you the game or lose you the game. And those are kind of independent of a certain swing of gold spread in the early game. So you can be 3k down or 3k up with general like composition, and if your quality of your play at 20 to 40 minutes is better, then you will win. So let's say you get a gold lead, a 3k gold lead at the beginning of the game, and the other team is better at 20 to 40 minutes, you will lose. Or if you get a 3k deficit and your quality of your decisions is better, you will win. So I'm saying that those are more important decisions to train and learn. Green insists that once the habits of liking compositional play are so ingrained, you literally cannot lose games anymore. Yes. I'm saying that like once your quality of your 20 to 40 minutes is pretty dang good, you should focus on other stuff. He also makes a somewhat blanket assertion that when teams choose to not snowball a game, this isn't actually a flaw. No, I didn't make a blanket assertion. I made an example. I said, for example, that's what an example is. It's not a blanket assertion. And I gave an example too. So let's say when a team that drafts a losing lane gets ahead in lane, and they're still going to lose lane, but they can't be dived anymore, plays safe, doesn't try to all in, and the game extends to 24 minutes to where all of a sudden their champions are better now, and then they tank up Baron, that is not a flaw. It's not a flaw to like get a lead and realize you're still weaker than your opposing lane and just chill and not get dived or dove. That was the example I gave. So it was an example. It wasn't a blanket assertion. I'll give Green the benefit of the doubt and assume he's only simplifying for convenience. Okay, you say that, but then you don't give me the benefit of the doubt. So that's kind of annoying. Not all compositions are well. This leads to a somewhat baseless assertion. Thanks for giving me the benefit of the doubt. Without focusing on training decisions in the first 20 minutes, you can rely on accumulating at most a 0 to 3k deficit. Yeah. Even prior to IEM World Championships, flaws in G2's early game were plain to see. Just pulling up G2's first game against Origin, the worst team in the league, mistakes are obvious. So this is where I start to get confused. You're arguing that we have flaws in our early game, even though I said we're going to have flaws in our early game. So don't look at our snowballing potential and cleanliness as a factor of our skill. And we won all of our matches, objectively meaning that we're better than all those other teams, and our focus of training is 20 to 40. So despite falling behind in a lot of our early games and having flaws, we still pooped on EU. So I'm kind of like mystified by your point here in saying that we have flaws in our early game. Of course we have flaws in our early game. Okay, then she shows a flaw in our early game. Regardless of whether you go off the EU LCS caster narrative or the argument Green proposes, these types of mistakes make it hard to believe G2 can rely on only accumulating a minimal deficit by the 20-minute mark. Indeed, Flash was categorically proved at IEM they cannot. Okay, so, oh, I get your point. Okay, so G2 can rely on only accumulating a minimal deficit without training the early game. I didn't claim that. I claim that if you are within a deficit range, that it doesn't matter what you did in the early game. So in order to snowball a game, you're on a clock. If you pick a snowballing comp, or if you want to win through sheer, like if you're suckier than the other team at 20 to 40, you need more than a 3K lead to win. That's what I'm saying. And that's hard to pull off because teams are really good at playing defense on the international level. Really good at playing defense, okay? So it's super hard to accumulate these big leads. And I'm talking about good teams. Okay, and the Flash was categorically proved at IEM they cannot. No, they didn't. It was not categorical. Flash Wolves got a lead against us in the first game. We got a lead against them in the next two games and lost. Therefore, proving my point and invalidating yours. Because it categorically proved the opposite. That Flash Wolves went down in gold, made better decisions 20 to 40, and won both those games. And then, of course, they also blew us out in the other one. Going into this IEM World Championships, I personally discounted Flash Wolves for reasons that align with Weldon Green's philosophy. In their games against UOL, Flash Wolves reflected a poor understanding of how to adapt, blah, blah, blah. The first game against Flash Wolves, the initial blow-up by Rock's Tigers against G2 seemed to be enough to make them change their tactic and draft stronger early game lanes in other matchups throughout the tournament. Trick placed much more pressure on his lanes, but G2 still struggled to play in the correct lanes to control the jungle. Okay. So this is like part of the article that she wanted to write, I believe, but could have been done without weird abstractions of nonsensical comments that kind of like then are contradicted in her argument that she wants to actually make in her article. I feel like it's flaw-ing your article because it would have been a cohesive article if not for the desire to like create some sort of story around it, and instead of just being an analyst piece. In game 3 against Rocks, Trick and Mythic, blah, blah, blah. So this is another example of this. In game 3 against Rocks, Trick and Mithy attempted an invade without mid control against Shen composition. Yes, Mithy made a mistake. He really wanted to like go in before level 6, even though he knew that he shouldn't have gone in before level 6. Tiger's top, mid, and jungle were able to quickly react and punish them. These kind of mistakes continued to plague G2 throughout IEM and appeared most glaringly in the final, a crushing 2-0 win. Appeared most glaringly in the final, but the opposite case, because we got a lead and then couldn't convert it after 20 minutes into a win, because they were better at tempo and pressure. One could easily dismiss Flash Wolves' pre-20-minute strengths if you didn't consistently net them single-game wins. Why are we talking about... Okay, we're talking about their strengths, but it's not part of the thing because... it's not part of our loss to them because we beat them in 2 out of 3 games early game. Okay, then she's talking about training your strengths. I fundamentally disagree with this. So this is kind of like the advice that a grandmother would give to a granddaughter when she asks, like, what major should I choose in college? Play to your strengths, dear. You're so pretty, become a newscaster. I don't know, something like some old generational grandmother would say. In sport, you don't focus on your strengths if you want to win a world championship. You focus on the game. You find out what is the absolute best way to play the game that you can accomplish. You craft a plan of training to achieve that, and then you try to achieve it. Obviously, if you cannot play the game in a certain way, then you do not. And essentially, what I'm arguing is we got to get good at playing real League of Legends. And what Kelsey is arguing is you're never going to get good at playing real League of Legends. Just fluff around doing whatever it is that you guys think games are. And I don't agree with that. Last year, Riot changed the game, blah, blah, blah. Then she talks about Baron. I think that she thinks I'm talking about Baron. Beyond these considerations, Green's main motivation for tunneling on mid to late came out of a discussion of Team Solomon's failures. When Green discussed TSM's failure despite their dominant run in the NALCS, he brings up the training philosophy centered around abusing and pressuring the early game. Here's a quote. This was because it was specifically trained. One training mechanism that I implemented was essentially like, if we aren't in a play at any point in the game, we're doing it wrong. What that results in is really proactive and overpowering 0 to 20 minutes against teams that cannot play defense, and even against teams that can play defense, a lot of pressure. Correct. So basically saying that, like, for the first half of the split with TSM, we focused on tempo and pressure in 0 to 20, making sure that there was not a single moment of the game that we didn't have tempo on our opponents and have pressure being crafting a play. And that for the second half of the split, like, we got really good at that, and then for the second half of the split, we focused on 20 to 40, how to convert that into lane pressure, into vision, into objectives. Lane pressure, into vision, into objectives. Like, the correct place to be on the map. And try to get that instinctive, okay? And by the way, like, my opinion is that those two should be reversed. You should train 20 to 40 and then 0 to 20. Instead of 0 to 20 and then 20 to 40, because then you have more time to emphasize 20 to 40, and I think it's more important, objectively. Then she says, it's misleading to bring up Team Solo Mid as an example of a team with a strong early game that wasn't training mid or late game technique and lost as a result, because TSM didn't lose games at the World Championship as a result of their mid and late game play. With the exception of one loss to RNG, TSM were behind in gold at the 10-minute mark in all of the World Championship losses. And in that game, they had a modest lead of 553 and never achieved a gold lead over 2.3k. This is exactly my point, Kelsey. Do you see my point? My point is, at the international stage, when you're playing against the best teams in the world, they play defense really well, and you can't expect to accumulate the same kind of leads that you would accumulate on the domestic stage. And therefore, you can't win off of massive 4K to 10K gold advantages from the early game play. That is exactly my point. That, like, we trained crushingly for the early game, and then on the international stage, you can't do that because the teams are just good. In addition, one of TSM's 3 wins featured them falling behind 561 gold at 10 minutes and amassing a deficit of 6.4k by 32 minutes before they get orchestrated comeback. That's because we trained comeback plays like mad all the time. We want to be able to win the game from any position. And we trained like 20 to 40 for the whole second half of the split, tried to ingrain those instincts. In the other 2 wins, TSM effectively cultivated a lead and snowballed it to victory. Great. So in 2 out of the 6 games we played, one of them we won off a comeback. In 2 of the other 6 games, we won from the training that we had done domestically, overpoweringly. And in the 3 games we lost, it didn't work because those teams were better at the 20 to 40. And we're good enough at the 0 to 20 to not lose to us, even though we trained that. That's my point. Why train that? Okay. I mean, not why train it. Of course you train it, but you don't train it at the exclusion of 20 to 40, and you train 20 to 40 first. Green later points to a specific game against RNG where he states that they had a lead the entire game, the entire time, but Cho was able to execute engages and win off 3 team fights. This seems disingenuous given that RNG's engaged plays were spaced throughout the game and based off somewhat easily exploitable padding from Dennis, with the first pick occurring the 4 minutes of the game. I'm talking about when our composition came online and we were positioned at turrets to take objectives, we had tempo and we had pressure, and their only option was to engage. They engaged and they won the execution. And based off of those 3 plays, they won the game. Which makes those 3 plays objectively more important than the entire rest of all the decisions we made to aggregate the pressure and the leads that we created. So if you can execute on those 3 plays, you win. And even if you have a little bit more deficit, you probably still win. RNG only lags slightly behind in mid-game objective trades, which is far from the snowball narrative Green tries to paint. No, that's exactly my point. That is exactly my point. Teams on the international stage know how to trade objectives, how to prevent snowballs, how to play defense, how to back off turrets and not get dove, and all of these like kind of standard things that you never see in domestic play. TSM overtraining the early game and losing later wasn't the problem internationally. I'm not sure that you know that, so I don't think that you can say that. I instead argue based on observing their games, TSM overtunneled the bonds on the map. Strategy line of dying blue buff. Okay, then she talks about the SSG game. This strategy relied on denying the blue buff from the enemy mid laner if they could not control the top side of the river. Arguably, in their week 2 loss to Samsung, it was failure to execute this strategy that prevented TSM from having strong laning phase and snowballing enough against SSG to win the mid game. No. What lost us the SSG game is that in the 20 to 40 minute mark, so we're talking about the same place that we lost all of our games, aside from the final RNG game, which we lost like at 3 minutes or something. We killed them in mid lane with 4 or 5 alive, I think maybe 5 alive, maybe 4 alive to get Baron, okay? And instead of having the correct instinct to immediately run to Baron, take the objective and win the game, Peter chose to all-in the Victor and died, thus losing the game. Now, of course, I'm putting a lot of like hilarious blame on this one moment, and there were hundreds of other failures in the game, but this is exactly my point, that like here you have an instinct that like is not trained well enough in 20 to 40 to say like, okay, cool, something triggers in your mind, we have what we should do is go onto our vision, clear our vision, start the objective, allow the person to come into the team and die, instead of doing the medium risk, medium reward, like outplay with heal, where you go into them as a solo and try to like kill them 1v1, right? So like that is exactly 100% an example in the same exact game of what I'm talking about. So I think your example like correlates my point. Other problems included a failure to rotate to their bottom lane. No, I'm saying that we did train these and we're really good at it, and we couldn't do it because the teams are really good. And so you should train more effective places of the game to win. So let me put it this way. It's like buying an expensive camera. Let's say I'm making a YouTube channel, okay? And I want to improve my production quality. So first I'm going to improve my video quality. So I spent $1,000 on a camera, 1K, $1,000. My video quality goes from 1 to 9. Woo! My production goes from like 2 for my webcam to 5. Yay, okay. Or I could spend 5K on a video camera. $5,000, an extra $4,000 I could spend on a video camera. And my video quality would go from 9 to 9.8. I'd get 0.8 more video quality for an extra $4,000. And my production would go from 5 to 5.8 because I just got slightly better video quality. What if I spent that $4,000 on sound equipment, post-production, overlays, graphics, channel art, like streaming card, a capture card, guests, marketing, whatever, 4K, spend it on everything else, and my production goes from a 5 to like a 9, or a 5 to an 8 off of the money spent on other stuff. So there's diminishing returns, okay? If you train an excessive amount of stuff on something that is not going to win you the game, what you're doing is playing into a losing battle of diminishing returns. So if you can identify the most fundamental acts of the game, which are from 20 to 40 minutes, they have the most bang for your buck in terms of winning the game, and you do those the best, then you can train the early game all you want, but you don't train it past the point of diminishing returns. Okay, if Green is really overreacting to say that the early game training doesn't matter based on performances of teams in the world, he's not only getting data from the other teams, but ignoring much larger problems you play. Most of the problems in our play were from 20 to 40 minutes. And draft. Ugh. Rather than the gut react in the opposite direction, and advise teams to focus on others. That's your philosophy is just dangerous. Teams spend time training all types of decision making. And so then she writes like a decent article. Still parts of the decent article that didn't need this weird narrative in there. People make this argument all the time. I disagree with it, but whatever. This is a weird assumption that I just want to correct now. Whether or not it's because G2 have made early game less of a priority, perhaps they haven't at all, and Green's narrative is simply for the cameras. It's your narrative, Kelsey, not my narrative. Whether or not it's because G2 have made early game less of a priority, Sven and Nithi's laning has appeared to decline. Sven has made simple mistakes like positioning, blah, blah, blah. Okay, first of all, I want people right now to allow people to suck and be bad, okay, and make bad decisions, because I want everybody to realize that if you take all the pro players in the world versus all the League of Legends players and you graph them on a curve, that pros will consist of 0.0002% of the population. The spread between one pro and another is huge, but the difference between them is not as large as you think it is, okay? The people at the top of this game are good, and you can go into a lane, and laning involves not only the 2v2 laning, but also the draft, and the division game, and the jungler game, and the interaction in the champions, and the timing of the power spikes, okay? So all of this must choreograph to make a lane look good or look bad. And then there's actual mechanical skill and decision making, okay? And of course people make mistakes, but like, just, it's impossible to not make mistakes in League of Legends. It is literally a game of errors, unforced errors all the time. The team that makes the fewest unforced errors and capitalizes by forcing errors of the opponent, so makes forced errors through proactive play to create forced errors, is usually the team that wins. Okay? So you will always be able to find flaws in people's play every single game or every single tournament, whatever. When you can decide to attribute those to whatever you want. So I could be like, I think Sven switched his diet to meat only last week. I wonder if this is attributing to his like bot lane play. So don't confuse like a game that cannot be played perfectly, just like many other games with like massive numbers of interaction in them, and just like decide that you want to attribute that to something. You can look for patterns and attribute those to things, but I would do it through conversation with people, not just like randomly deciding it. But if G2 would focus less on developing these early game strengths, surely their intense mid and late game training has yielded benefits in other areas. Sure. So far, I haven't seen the positive results. Well, you haven't looked. For example, in Game 2 against Flashwolves, Parks remained confined to the short lane against Cinder well past the 20-minute mark. Rather than take advantage of Jay's superior ability to side lane and G2's duo to the mid lane, G2 merely left Jason a zero-sum farm against Maple, ultimately benefited the Flash shows when they baited G2 into frankly idiotic contested for Cloud to allow MS to pick up Baron at 20 minutes. This is exactly my point, Kelsey. We got a lead in the game, and because Flash shows was better at 20 to 40 minutes, they won because of this stupid decision. How do we fix this? We train this stuff. This is my point. This is the whole point. This is exactly the opposite of what your title says and the whole argument like the article is about, and this is exactly what I'm saying. So this is why it makes me feel like this narrative is so forced and pointless, because like you're literally contradicting it as you're trying to write a good article. You could have just written that article instead. G2 need to train mid and late game decision making if they're making these choices. Yes, exactly. But so far they seem to be doing that at the expense of their strengths. No, we're not. It's not an oversight. And no, we're not. If a team's natural strengths lie in the early game, it's more important they should continue to hone them. Listen, it's a scrim, okay? We don't get to drill games. We can't just like start the game at 20 minutes and play it out. You have to play every single game from start to finish. You don't not hone skills at the expense of the other one. It's the choices you make in the post game on what you focus on as a team unit that matter. And if you go from 100%, why couldn't we snowball this, to 50%, what are our instincts 20 to 40 and what are our instincts 0 to 20? Like, that is not honing skills. Congrats to G2 on their top 2 finish in a national event. Thank you. It pains me to see the team lose some of its greatest strengths without payoff. I think you're really confused here. We didn't lose some of its greatest strengths. You're inventing those great strengths and attributing them to teams that, like, the other teams deserved to have the strength that they did. And 2, IM was a perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about. Teams that were worse than us from 20 to 40 minutes got huge leads against us and lost the game. And teams that were better than us at 20 to 40 minutes, one team that's better than us at 20 to 40 minutes, we got leads against and we lost. I hope the experience has taught them about the most important part of the game is the part where you find your best advantage. Yes, 100%. And you find your best advantage 20 to 40 minutes in tactical, tempo, and pressure play. Your condition for victory is whatever you make it. I don't know what that means, but okay. So anyway, comments. I'm going to open Twitch chat now. Okay, I got to scroll all the way up. Why the salt? Lol, he's just defending himself. All right. I was referring to when he says scientific proof that tie does this chat. Well done, Dick Riders. Yay. If they have a lead, they should be using that play. I'm just going to scroll to the bottom. Hi, everybody. I look like Littlefinger from Game of Thrones. Yeah, probably. Okay. Also giving me a chance to procrastinate finishing off my assignments. Yep. Juicy drama. He isn't giving any depth whatsoever. He's literally saying, no, that's wrong. Talks about something really... Okay, go ahead and ask. No regrets. I will give insane depth. Try me. Pretty clear he only read like half the article and decided to fire up the stream. Nope. I read the article, and then I created a video about it, and then I reread the article, and then I was prepared, and so I started the stream. How is giving line-by-line logic not substantial? It is substantial. Don't be trolled by him. Face when you sell your snake oil so well, people believe in what he's saying right now. Yeah, it's because I'm good. So he isn't actually going to prove his point and says he's going to give a roundabout answer to suit him. What is my point? No regrets. I can't improve my upload speed. I'm on a crap computer on a crappy internet. I am not recording this because I can't do both at the same time. Pretty sure I'm the same rank as the SKT coach if he's diamond then. Okay. Any questions? No questions from Twitch chat. Okay. You don't have to watch the cam, okay? You can just listen. Nobody's asking actual questions. They're just arguing in my Twitch chat. No regrets. He isn't giving any depth whatsoever. Literally saying no, that's wrong. Talks about something barely waited 5 minutes. You missed the beginning part of the stream where I was giving the reasons. But ask your question, please. Type it out. You should check that out. All right, I'm just going to go to full stream here because just waiting for people to comment in chat. Do you think that it is good as a psychologist supposed to feel like this? I'm not a psychologist. Where'd you get that idea? I've never claimed to be a psychologist. Expose myself like this? What's that mean? It's so easy to dismiss every point someone makes on the basis of one comment they've made. It's really hard to write an article just because he has said talent doesn't exist. Do you think that it's logical to do? He doesn't know he's talking about any subject. I also know what I'm talking about on the talent subject. Unfortunately, Rudy Garou doesn't quite have the intellect to understand my video, so he just likes to make lol comments and cringe and not try to understand science. But oh well. Glad you love the Mac program. The Google Forms exist, but I'm trying to find the points, the programs which are missing them. I have a long list that I'm going through from feedback from people who are like pointing out when they're missing, and that's how I'm adding them back in. I don't think my YouTube chat is like working at all. You didn't really address Kelsey's last point on lane assignments with Jason Syndra. Do you have reading comprehension issues? The point is that we did that lane assignment wrong, and that lane assignment falls within 20 to 40 minutes, which is exactly what I'm saying we need to train. So we suck at that. We need to train it. So we should train it. That's what I'm saying. We had a lead at that point in the game. And even though we had a lead, we couldn't win the game because their decision making was better at that point. Does that make sense? Their lane assignment is actually our reaction to our reaction to their reaction to our lane assignment. But how strong do you feel G2's mid-late game is now compared to other top international teams? I can't really comment on that, but I would say better than Rox and Kongdu and worse than Flash Wolves. If you're saying that teams in international tournaments are good at defense to the point that 0-20 minutes doesn't matter, I didn't say it doesn't matter. Did you even listen to the video? Like, I didn't say it doesn't matter. I said that 20 to 40 is more important. Can I actually address the points made by the game? Oh, like Cinder and Jace? Okay. Where's the article? Let me see if I can remember that. She was saying something about Jace was in the wrong lane. I don't know. I'm gonna do VOD analysis later, and I will put it up on stream. This isn't a VOD review, but I will definitely do VOD review later. If you want to learn about macro, I'll teach it. I didn't contest the point. I agreed with her point. I said that her point contradicts herself. I 100% agree with what she wrote. And then I said, look, what she wrote is what I said. Why do you feel the need to respond? Not saying you're wrong, just curious. I feel the need to respond because she basically just made up a narrative out of nothing and then wrote an entire article about a false world that's in her head and is passing it off as if it's real because she didn't bother to call me on Skype. If you're saying that teams in international terms are good at defense, the point, oh, I already answered that. So only the start of the stream you actually made any points without the rest? No, I didn't not make points the rest of the stream. It's not that 0-20 doesn't matter at all, as points practicing 24 is more crucial because most teams manage to stay within 3K gold of each other if they're good. Yeah, and practicing it doesn't give you a magical ability to get to 6K. There was Rudy Guru. A lot of science. Yeah, I know the stream is lagging. But the alternative was a non-interactive video. you can't compare the levels of NA and EU without direct tournaments, but it's pretty clear to see. Hey, Johnny Mozzarella, take a look at that word, esports psychology trainer, MSc Sports Psychology. Where in there does it say psychologist? I really concretely tell everybody who reports about me and who talks about me and everybody that esports psychology trainer, like psychologist, is a protected legal term used to classify people who can provide mental health care to people with mental deficiencies. And it's a more or less like along the medical lines, right? Sports psychology and the study of sports psychology does not have license to use that term. There are people who become psychologists and then go and study sports psychology, and they use the term sports psychologist themselves, but 99% of the people out there called sports psychologists are just incorrectly labeled that by the media because they don't know the difference between psychology and psychologist, according to the law. Kepler, with how well G2 did IM, what are your expectations then for Worlds? My focus is on playoffs. I don't blame her for not wanting to call you on Skype. Well then, I don't blame her for it either. Fix your internet before doing VOD analysis. I can't. My internet is my internet. Sorry. I'm watching YouTube chat, but nobody's saying anything other than lag, lag, lag. Since you're listed as assistant coach, how are responsibilities allocated between you and Young Buck and Alex Taranda? Like, would poor macro game be a failure at conception, implementation, etc.? It's a coaching staff, so we have a head coach and 2 assistant coaches. We divvy up management responsibilities, although Alex takes a lot of those because he's fantastic. Joey focuses on draft and does most of the drafting games. The rest of us pretty much equally work on training, behavior change, strategy, managing the players' everyday lives, champion pools, meta, etc. Then there's an analyst. And Joey and Alex do the bulk of it since they're in the house, and I am part-time. Can I talk about how Ocelot's philosophy and yours intermingle? Yeah, we both want to become world-class at what we do. And so he wants to become the best CEO in the world, in history, and I want to become the best coach of League of Legends and then other esports in history. How does G2 and TSM's org philosophy differ? They're actually quite similar. Both Reggie and Carlos are like really focused on the bottom line. They both want to run proper businesses. They both like were pro players, so they know what it's like. They're both trying to reach into other esports and other brands. When they both started in League of Legends, they both made money from playing and then threw all of that money back at future generations of players and invested a ton of their own money into their own orgs. They both fight for kind of like player rights, but also like try to be incredibly fair and make sure that other people have jobs. They both run their orgs like lean startups and don't waste money. Yeah, they're pretty freaking awesome, both of them. Do you think G2 has learned a lot from IEM? Yes. And thank you. I know my stream is laggy. MSI will tell us how much G2 has improved. MSI will tell us that we won playoffs. So, playoffs. Why are you not working for TSM anymore? TSM was a temporary thing because my wife was on maternity leave from her career. What are these spams? No, you can just ask questions. I don't care. I mean, Vivan Zulu, it's different. Winning the split is different from winning playoffs. I don't think it's likely that we won't get first place in the split. But then it's the team that wins playoffs that goes to MSI. And playoffs are postseason, and anything can happen in postseason. Can we get a summary of your rebuttal for those that joined late? Kelsey tacked on this weird kind of made up set of assumptions of like reality of what it is that I think and that we do in her head, and then tried to fit it into an article that could have been fine on its own, and then contradicted it at many, many points throughout the article, kind of validating my actual argument. And then stats saying early game 0 to 3K advantage often lead to victory, but how can we make stats out of a 20 to 40 minute decisions? Probably pretty easily. G2 in my eyes is good regionally, but still look like the form they were in last year. That's just me, though. I would say that they're changing in the last 4 weeks, Umzu. I would say that their form is... I would say that the form that was exhibited in this IEM, to my eyes, was exactly what I would want to see at this point in terms of growth, in terms of resilience, in terms of coming back from a 10K deficit to win a game through making better decisions than the opponent. Solaron, it doesn't have to do with stats. It has nothing to do with stats, okay? What it has to do with is what are the fundamental decisions that win you the game, and you work back from there. So start from Nexus, work back to towers, work back to outer towers, start from the movements of the game that get you those objectives, and then look at how those movements are like either optimized or like prevented and reworked. And then from there, identify fundamentals that have the biggest impact on whether or not you take the nexus or the inhibitor, for example. And then start trying to figure out how to check if you're correct. And test. Do you think coaches need to know a lot about League? Yes, I've always said that if you want to coach a League team, the very first thing you should do is get Diamond or more. That's what I want to do. The moment I decided I wanted to coach League of Legends, I coached myself to Diamond. Then I was like, okay, I can coach. Great. And then I started building my brand. Is there aspects of NA EU as a region that should aspects of NA that EU as a region should adapt and vice versa? NA structurally is pretty amazing, and EU is really player centric still, so I think that should change. And then NA is really not flexible in draft compared to EU, because in EU people are just better players. Like, people are just better. They can whip out a champion on stage. Like, I don't know if you saw Luca like dumpster rocks with Ari, but we didn't train Ari like in 50 scrims in a row or anything. Like, he just was like, yeah, this champ's a counter, whipped it out, performed like top level in the world at it with like very minimal prep. So also, I think that like players in EU solo queue like insanely more than in NA. I think that like player skill is much more prided here. I think that people train harder as individuals and worse as a team. So that's basically my assumption. How does going from LCS to IEM back to LCS affect players? It's gonna feel like going back to a kids pool, honestly. How do you think G2 will be when MSI comes around? We'll be focusing on playoffs. You think they will have made enough progress by then to actually have a shot at winning it? MSI is future think. I'm focused on winning playoffs. H2K is the only team that can really challenge G2 in a best of 3. No, I think Splice, UOL, certainly UOL now. Origin. Oh wait, no, never mind. Ha! Sorry, couldn't resist. No other questions? I'm not frozen. I'm just sitting here. Oh, Misfits. Yeah, Misfits. Yeah, Misfits. Thanks. Oh, if I open Discord, my computer will crash. Can you type it here, Ali Nisar? I'm streaming this on like one of those, pieces of twine that connects to empty cans that you like hold up to your ear and the other person talks to. And then, so that's my internet. And then on my computer is actually a waffle iron that I poured full of this energy drink. And that's what I'm streaming on. So Misfits if Cacao goes off and Mythium perks run it down mid. Yeah. G2 just outdrafts EU teams, to be honest. That's because we train draft a lot. And also, our players are insane and they can literally just like, they have the flexibility to pull out stuff and perform at a world, at an EU class level, like at a domestic level. Just fine. The only EU team that knows how to control Baron is Misfits. Good thing they don't know how to play with Baron once they have it. Or that might be scary. Why doesn't G2 value Ashe as high as Korean teams? I'm not going to comment on that at the moment, but mostly it's because Korea is still playing on the previous patch up until recently. And Ashe was OP on that patch and not as OP on the next patch. And now there's a new patch which is going to change the value of Ashe again. So I would say please look at the patches that OGN has played on before making assumptions about draft like that. Because I'm pretty sure that in the intermediary, Ashe is going to drop down another, and you're going to see a reflection of like the EU meta basically. Ali Nisar asks, I was wondering what deliberate practice means, how I can use it in life for school. I was wondering what deliberate practice means and how I can use it in life for school or anything. Oh, deliberate practice is I+1, so taking everything that you can do and stretching your limits in a direct way with a plan, testing that plan, reflecting on it, and trying to come up with another way to do it. That's all it is. It's being a reflective practitioner. or a research practitioner. What did you think about Flashweb's comment a day or two ago saying that EU meta isn't suited for international play? I don't know if they meant EU champ select or EU macro, but I agree with both. However, I also think that conforming to a meta is really good for best of fives and really bad for best of ones, because what happens when two metas meet in a best of one is like a lot of weird stuff. And then when teams meet in a best of five, the proper meta wins. So I think that it's really good to have like roots in your meta and be able to pull it out for best of ones, and then be able to like but be training the real League of Legends. Could you talk or mention thoughts on Baron versus Elder Dragon? Baron wins the game, Elder Dragon delays Baron. Also, don't trade Elder Dragon for Nexus. That's a really bad trade. We tried that trade once, TSM, we lost the game. It was like, what? Oh yeah, Nexus. Forgot. Maybe he also looked good on Ari because his opponent wasn't used to it. Bingo. But also Ari counters Jace pretty hard in terms of... Doesn't really counter, it's just like... Yeah, it's pretty good against Jace. I think SKT is going to win. I've actually been watching KT and I'm kind of surprised by some of the decisions they're making. So I think if SKT is super motivated, that they're probably going to play in an incredibly focused way. Wasn't that comment more like EU isn't good at adapting their meta to international play, not the meta is intrinsically bad? That could be it. I think it's actually just intrinsically bad because it's so based on like if you... Yeah, it's just, last year it was just bad. I think this year it's better, but like, to be perfectly honest, last year EU was literally like a... bad. I don't know how else to put it, guys. I'm sorry. We watched EU games, okay? And so did the rest of the world for some reason. But not a lot of people watched them, to be perfectly honest. Like, viewership was down. And the meta last year was teams that just did not know how to play with tempo. They didn't know how to play with pressure. Like, I think, this is what I think. I think Immortals came in and provided such a massive competition for North America in the spring split that everybody leveled the heck up, like, insanely. And then we trained against Immortals and Cloud9 for, like, the whole year, and in this little triad, incestuous triad of, like, amazingness and CLG, and Immortals literally dragged North America into the future, basically, through their competition. They're just like that first spring split of just like shoving it down people's throats. And maybe Fnatic was doing the same thing to EU, but the infrastructure in EU didn't exist to download that and institutionalize it. Whereas the infrastructure in NA did exist because the conflux of money and size at the same time resulted in like actual like staffs, coaching staffs in 4 teams actually, that had full-on coaching staffs. And they were able to respond to Immortals' excellence by competing with it. And I think that if in the year before, if EU had the infrastructure they have next split and a little bit this split, they would have downloaded Fnatic and would be like would have challenged North America and the world easily in spring split and summer split last year, instead of just being just not that great. And so I think it's even tougher this year because not much has changed in EU. But this IEM experience, I think, is going to be a massive... Like, I'm kind of sad and it didn't go. I think that they would have actually learned a lot from it. Just, like, they can watch it, right, and learn from it, which is great, but it's different to have it beat into your body. And I think that it's really going to be like a good injection in terms of EU. It's going to be fantastic for the region. So, what do I think about Riot's balance team nerf everything so at some point game might be in balance? Yeah, I like the idea of nerfing everything instead of buffing everything. I think it's fun. It's my personal preference in terms of design philosophy. What about sports coach? They might used to be good, but not anymore. What's the difference between league coach and sports coach? I don't think sports coaches were ever good. That was a joke. People thought they were good because people like me came in and were like from traditional sport and were like successful, but they didn't pay attention enough to notice that like some sports coaches were bronze players and some sports coaches were diamond players. Practice with planning, yes. Camba Maravilla asks, Immortals dragged NA to the next level, but they always played for early game and snowballed. How does this match your theory? Think about it. Just think about what you said. Cabra Maravilla. Just think about what you said. They played for early game and snowball. They didn't make MSI. They didn't win playoffs. They didn't make worlds. Is it connecting yet? Are the dots connecting yet? They played for the wrong part of the game. Every other team in North America, like, they had me and Parth, they had Reapered, and we knew, and they had Reggie, by the way, and they knew that you win the game in these fundamental tactical decisions, 20 to 40 minutes, based on tempo, based on objective play, based on sitting on vision and waiting for the opponent to walk into you, based on, like, everybody having the same instinct at the same time. So they trained the wrong thing. They trained a part of the game. I don't even know if they trained it, but they were good at a part of the game that matters, but does not win you the game. Of course, it's important, but it's not as important as 20 to 40, which is why they didn't go to Worlds, and we did. As far as how they dragged NA to the next meta, they were so good at that literally you had to learn to survive. Like, you had to learn 0 to 20 just to even scrim against them. I mean, it was insane. They were so good in scrims at dismantling you that it was like this high pressure, like, gauntlet that you had to walk through. Get dodge punches from both directions blindfolded. Maybe you can give us some Baron and we can... Ash is 100% pick ban on 7.3 today in LCK, but it's the first day of 7.3, dude. Calm down. Are you aware there's a men's underwear company called Mac Weldon? Should consider... And also, Korea is slow to innovate. I'm sorry to say it. Like, to be perfectly honest, like, Korea is fast to master, slow to innovate. Like, and those two things go together, by the way. So if you see things in systems and you train them in systems, innovation is just like more plotted, right? You plan for innovation. And then you have a system, and so as soon as you plug something in, you master it. But then that equivocally means that you don't just like randomly pick up crap and then dilute the quality of your system. So the same thing that means that Korea is a little slower to innovate on new champions means that they are very fast to master them when they come in. And then, of course, they see patterns in champions and are able to pick them up. And it's not innovation, it's actually just awareness. Whereas other regions more or less have to discover them accidentally. Are you aware that there's a men's underwear company called Mac Weldon? You should consider some promotion time with the Mac program. That's pretty cool. Konnichiwa. Sakura Handa. Konbanwa. I don't agree with much of the article. It might help on your end to define what you mean by 20 to 40 minute decision making. I think breaking the phases down via time versus characteristics creates semantic arguments. Sure. But I think fundamentally decisions after laning phase are totally different. because the jungler isn't leading the team anymore by his presence. It's more like the teleport leading the team. Rap B667, where are you now? Do you think G2 will improve enough to perform at MSI? We're focused on playoffs. I am in Finland in my house. Thoughts on stalling mid-game and getting picks and taking fights? I hate stalling. Stalling is the devil. Proactive play is the way that you win. Parth was a Boeing engineer, so he must be smart. I just met a Boeing engineer the other day. I was talking about Immortals Fire, though. Somebody asks, I mean, most basketball coaches clearly can't play basketball anymore, but can still coach. Why is that? It doesn't matter if they can play now. It only matters if they could play. Well, then how do you feel about having one designated shot caller instead of giving each player responsibility to shot call 4? I think that's a dumb idea. To have one designated shot caller. You don't designate leadership. It's innate or trained. It's not delegated. Is Doublelift going to come back to TSM? So an Immortal... Hey, well, and I messaged you on Twitter about learning Korean, but I'm having a little trouble getting started. Any ideas? No, dude. Just gotta do it. Just grind it out. It's the only way to learn about a language that's non-contextual to English. I think in the article, Kelsey got so much positive response because she's bad reputation. I think she got positive response because she's a good writer and a good analyst. And like, nobody else would know that she made up the incomplete fabrication of reality that she's arguing into. And Baze, you can't ignore that there's some politics going on too, like there's unnecessary confrontation going on. Kelsey and is friends with Thorne and thinks Weldon's a fraud, so. Because it's not a question. Andres Giraldo. Am I listed in talk shows? I hope I'm listed in talk shows right now. Otherwise I'm totally breaking Twitch terms of service. Sorry, Twitch, if I'm not listed in talk shows. I'm bad. Clearly this is a talk show. I'm like not in queue for anything. Well, now it's a Q&A, but nobody's asking questions, so I can't even open Twitch, so I don't know if everybody's gone, but it might be time to wrap up the stream if nobody else has any other questions. Let me see here. Twitch. League of Legends. No, I'm not under League of Legends. How do I see my own stream? Oh. 64. Okay. All right. Good night, guys. What's the point of talking about TIP and Immortals match? Neither of those teams even qualified for Worlds. TIP is not even a League of Legends team anymore. I'm sorry, my game's Weldon, but stream was lagging. I didn't hear your answer last time. Do you think G2 learned a lot from IEM? Yes. Is there a big difference between coaching in NA versus coaching in EU? Yes. I would say the difference is that everybody, because the teams that are adopting insane kinds of infrastructure correctly are pulling off good performances, everybody wants to try it and try to figure it out, but only the top teams are doing it successfully. And in EU, I feel like everybody is still on basic infrastructure and basically just has one or two people in their house. So that's the biggest difference. Nobody is approaching like C9, TSM, Immortals in terms of coaching infrastructure, because we copied Korea in those orgs, and Korea copied traditional sport, and everything else is built opposite. Let me put it this way. This is the pyramid in EU and NA prior to, and in some NA teams and prior to last year. And it's basically like players is the bottom of the pyramid, okay? And then support staff, so like coach, strategic coach, whatever, and then like org staff, like maybe they have a cook or whatever, and then owner, okay? And this is Korea and North America top 3 teams. Support staff, coach support staff of the org, okay? And then coaching staff across all teams, into coaching and development staff, and then players. So players are the pinnacle of the pyramid in the structure, and everything else is designed to create the same level of performance. So you plug and play players, and everything else brings them up to speed. And also, the longevity part of your org is your coaching and developmental staff, because betting on players for longevity when they're just going to get traded away or poached, not poached, but like, traded away, and then your team tanks like Origin did, is just a bad sports approach. Nobody does that because it's dumb. You build a sporting organization that creates performance, not buying performance and then hoping that nobody steals it away from you. Scouting is important, but development is more important. Development of performance, of high performance. Do you think that if G2 had the opportunity to scrim LCK teams and play Korean solo queue, that would help you out? So Korean solo queue is obviously the best training. EU is probably second best, I guess. Obviously, scrimming LCK teams, we could download their meta. But honestly, scrimming mid-tier LCK teams versus top-tier EU teams, probably. Yeah, probably. I would want to mix and match. Runtime versus Soylent in terms of nutrition, not taste. Runtime. I actually don't know the answer to that, Solaron, because I don't know if I haven't used Soylent at all, and I don't know what's in it, and I have used Runtime, and I do know what's in it. So I can't really answer that question. Hey Weldon, in the current meta and in general, do you think junglers are the key to winning early game? Is it impossible for laners to create leads, not just through CS, but through roams? It's junglers are the key to winning lane. Yes. I mean, it's possible for laners to take super high-risk plays that create leads, or the other lane to screw up and create a lead. But everything else is pretty well structured. How useful will knowledge of Korean be as a professional player? Probably not as useful as Chinese. So you think the only teams that matter are the ones that qualify for national tournaments? I think winners take all in sport, Andres. Winners take all. Okay, guys. Thanks for the show, and good night.